The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 12 different species gathered around the massive crystalline table. Ambassador Zexhai of the Vorthak Empire clicked her mandibles anxiously, her four eyes darting between the holographic displays showing the crisis unfolding in the Kepler system. "The situation grows worse by the hour," she announced, her translator converting her chittering speech into standard galactic. "The Devourers have consumed 3 more colonies. At this rate, they'll reach the core worlds within 2 cycles." Commander Thrall of the Altarian fleet slammed his scaled fist against the table. "My warships are being torn apart like paper. These creatures, they adapt to everything we throw at them. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, even our most advanced shield technology. Nothing stops them for long." The Devourers were unlike anything the galaxy had faced before. They weren't a species in the traditional sense, but rather a collective consciousness of metallic, ever-changing beings that consumed technology and biological matter alike. They learned from every encounter, becoming stronger and more resistant with each battle. Elder KYNN of the Cerebral Collective floated in her containment sphere, her massive brain pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. "Our psychic attacks prove futile. Their collective mind is too vast, too alien for us to penetrate or disrupt." The room fell silent, except for the soft humming of translation devices. They had exhausted every conventional option. The combined military might of 12 advanced civilizations was being systematically dismantled by these relentless invaders. "There is one possibility," whispered Ambassador Nyx from the shadows where her gaseous form undulated nervously. "But it violates our most sacred laws." All eyes turned toward her. The Nyxians were known for their cautious nature and deep respect for galactic protocols. "Speak plainly," demanded Commander Thrall. "The 3rd planet of the Sol system," Nyx continued reluctantly. "Earth. Its inhabitants have proven remarkably resourceful in warfare." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Even mentioning Earth in this context was considered taboo. The Sol system had been declared off-limits by unanimous galactic decree nearly 50 cycles ago. The humans of Earth had been classified as a developing species under protection after their first crude radio signals were detected. Standard protocol demanded complete non-interference until they achieved faster-than-light travel on their own. But the galaxy's intelligence networks have been quietly monitoring human progress, and what they observed was both fascinating and terrifying. Humans possessed an almost supernatural ability to find creative solutions under pressure, especially when facing impossible odds. "Absolutely not." Elder Kilwinen's patterns flashed angry crimson. "The Prime Directive is absolute. No species may interfere with a developing civilization. Even to save ourselves?" Ambassador Zexhai's voice carried a desperate edge. The debate raged for hours. Species that had been allies for centuries found themselves divided. The Vorthak Empire argued for immediate contact, while the Cerebral Collective insisted on maintaining cosmic law. The Altarians wavered between military necessity and moral obligation. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim, another colony went dark. Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Earth vessel Endeavour was conducting a routine survey mission near the edge of the solar system when her communications officer picked up the strange transmissions. The signals were clearly artificial, but unlike anything in Earth's databases. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Shun called from his station. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures beyond Pluto. Multiple ships, but the configurations don't match any known Earth technology." Sarah studied the sensor readings with growing concern. The signatures suggested vessels of enormous size, far beyond anything humanity had built. More troubling were the intermittent distress signals her equipment was barely able to decode. "Are you certain these aren't experimental military craft?" she asked. "Negative, ma'am. The power outputs are off the charts. And, Captain, some of these signals appear to be coming from the direction of nearby star systems. This isn't human technology." As if to confirm their worst fears, a flash of brilliant light erupted in the distance. Through their telescopes, they watched as something massive and dark consumed what appeared to be a metallic structure the size of a small moon. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it seemed they had their answer, and it was more terrifying than anyone had imagined. Unknown to the Endeavor's crew, they had just witnessed the Devourers consuming a Galactic Council monitoring station. The same station that had been secretly watching Earth for decades, ensuring humanity remained ignorant of the greater galactic community. The irony was not lost on those council members who knew. In their desperation to protect a primitive species, they might have doomed themselves to extinction. Captain Sarah Mitchell stared at the decoded fragments of alien transmissions scrolling across her screen. 3 days had passed since the Endeavor first detected the strange signals, and her linguistics team had made disturbing progress in translation. Captain Dr. Rodriguez, her xenolinguistics expert, approached with trembling hands holding a data pad. We've managed to piece together more of these transmissions. Ma'am, they're distress calls. Multiple species are under attack by something they call Devourers. Sarah felt her stomach drop. How many species? At least 12 distinct linguistic patterns, possibly more. And, Captain, the mathematical coordinates they're broadcasting suggest battles occurring throughout our local galactic cluster. Lieutenant Chun looked up from his sensor station, his face pale. Ma'am, I'm detecting movement at the edge of our solar system. Something big is approaching from the Kuiper Belt. Through the viewport, they could see nothing but stars. But the sensors told a different story. A massive object, roughly the size of Manhattan, was drifting toward the inner solar system. Its composition readings were unlike anything in their databases, part metallic, part organic, and constantly shifting. Is it one of the ships that was fighting? Sarah asked. Unknown. It's not matching any of the previous signatures, but... Chen paused, running additional scans. Captain, this thing isn't emitting any distress signals, and it's heading directly toward Earth. Meanwhile, in the emergency session of the Galactic Council, the debate had reached a fever pitch. The Devourers had consumed 2 more systems, and their advance showed no signs of slowing. Ambassador Zexhai projected holographic casualty reports. 47 billion beings lost in the past week alone. Our combined fleets have been reduced to 30% operational capacity. Elderkinen's bioluminescent patterns had shifted to deep purple, a color rarely seen, indicating profound distress. The mathematical projections are clear. At current rates of advancement, the Devourers will reach the core worlds within 8 cycles. After that, she didn't need to finish. Everyone in the chamber understood that the core worlds represented the heart of galactic civilization. If they fell, it would mean the end of everything they had built over millennia. Commander Thrall stood slowly, his scales dulled with exhaustion. I've lost 12 fleets. 12 ships and crews that have defended the galaxy for generations, gone in mere days. My tactical computers can't even predict their next move because they adapt faster than we can strategize. And yet you still oppose contact with Earth? Zexhai challenged. The Prime Directive exists for good reason, Thrall replied, though his conviction seemed shaken. Once we break that barrier, we fundamentally alter the development of an entire species. The ethical implications. Ethics become meaningless if we're all dead, interrupted Ambassador Nix, her gaseous form darkening with frustration. Dr. Elon of the Synthetic Collective spoke for the first time during the session, his mechanical voice cutting through the emotional arguments. I have been analyzing human military history through our long-range observation protocols. Their strategic thinking is unusual. Where we see impossible situations, they see puzzles to be solved. The chamber fell silent. The Synthetic Collective rarely offered opinions, preferring to observe and calculate. Explain, Elder KYNN requested. Humans possess what they call outside-the-box thinking. Their military conflicts are filled with examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through unconventional tactics. They seem to thrive under pressure in ways that defy logical prediction. Back on the Endeavor, Captain Mitchell had made a command decision that would change the course of galactic history. Lieutenant Shun, prepare a probe for launch. I wanted to intercept that object before it gets too close to Earth. Captain, if that thing is hostile, then we need to know before it reaches population centers. Dr. Rodriguez, prepare a message pod with everything we've learned about these alien transmissions. If this goes badly, at least Earth will have some warning. The probe launched silently into the void, its sensors focused on the approaching object. What they discovered defied their worst fears. The entity wasn't just a ship, it was alive. A writhing mass of metallic tendrils and organic components, constantly reconfiguring itself as it moved through space. Worse, it was actively scanning their probe, learning from their technology in real time. Captain, the probe's systems are being analyzed and copied, Chin reported with growing alarm. Whatever this thing is, it's incorporating our design elements into its own structure. But then something unexpected happened. The entity stopped its advance and began transmitting. The message was simple, broadcast in the same alien languages they had been monitoring. Small craft detected. Non-threatening. Analyzing defensive capabilities. Assessment, primitive but curious. Deviation from expected parameters noted. Requesting collective consultation. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from his translation work, bewildered. Captain, I think it's calling for backup. But not because we're a threat, because we're interesting. Sarah stared at the readings, a cold realization washing over her. It's not just any alien ship. It's one of the Devourers. And we just got its attention. Unknown to the humans, their probe had done something unprecedented in galactic history. The Devourer Collective, which had consumed countless civilizations without pause, had encountered something that genuinely puzzled them. Human technology was primitive by galactic standards, yet the probe's design showed signs of the same adaptive creativity that had made humans such effective warriors throughout their history. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers found themselves curious rather than simply hungry. In the Galactic Council chamber, long-range sensors detected the pause in the Devourer advance toward Earth. For a brief moment, hope flickered among the desperate representatives. Then, they realized what this meant. Humanity had just made first contact with the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The silence aboard the Endeavor was deafening as Captain Mitchell processed the implications of their discovery. The alien entity hovering at the edge of their solar system wasn't just any extraterrestrial visitor. It was one of the beings responsible for the distress calls they had intercepted. Dr. Rodriguez, how confident are you in the translation protocols? Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Approximately 70% accuracy based on the linguistic patterns we've mapped. But, Captain, the entity's responses suggest it's not operating on standard communication protocols. It seems to be thinking out loud. Lieutenant Chin's hands flew over his console as new sensor data streamed in. Captain, we're receiving additional transmissions from deep space. Multiple sources, all using similar encryption patterns to our visitor. The communications array crackled to life with voices speaking in a dozen different alien languages. But now, with their improved translation matrix, the Endeavor's crew could understand fragments of the desperate conversations taking place across the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Corthex reporting total casualties in the vegan system. Evacuation of Centauri colonies proceeding, but we've lost contact with Transport Convoy 7. The creatures are learning our tactics faster than we can adapt them. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up a star chart marked with red zones indicating attack systems. Captain, based on these communications, we're looking at a galaxy-wide war. And from what I can determine, the side calling for help is losing badly. Sarah studied the data, her military training analyzing the strategic picture. The pattern was clear. A highly adaptive enemy was systematically consuming civilization after civilization, growing stronger with each victory. The entity outside our solar system, she said slowly, it's part of the attacking force. But it stopped when it detected our probe. Why? Before anyone could answer, their visitor began transmitting again. This time, The message was different, more structured, as if it had been conferring with others of its kind. Collective assessment complete. Species designation, unknown. Technology level, primitive but innovative. Threat assessment, negligible. Curiosity factor, high. Proposal, temporary non-consumption pending analysis of adaptive patterns. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Dr. Rodriguez cleared his throat nervously. I believe it's decided not to eat us for now, because we're interesting. Meanwhile, in the emergency session of the Galactic Council, panic had given way to desperate calculation. Elder KYNN floated in her sphere, her patterns now a rapid strobing of colors that indicated intense mental activity. The Devourer advance has paused at the Sol system, she announced. Our long-range sensors confirm they've encountered the human monitoring probe. Ambassador Zexai leaned forward. This could be our opportunity. If the Devourers are distracted, or it could be worse, interrupted Commander Thrall. If they consume human technology and adapt their innovative thinking patterns. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. The Devourers had already proven capable of incorporating the strengths of every species they encountered. The last thing the galaxy needed was for them to acquire humanity's legendary resourcefulness. Dr. Elon of the Synthetic Collective processed the data with mechanical precision. Probability analysis suggests a 47% chance that direct observation of human tactical thinking will enhance Devourer capabilities beyond our ability to resist. And the alternative? Asked Ambassador Nix. Initiate contact protocols with Earth immediately. Warn them of the threat, and hope their unconventional approach can provide solutions we have not considered. Back on the Endeavor, Captain Mitchell made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Lieutenant Shun, prepare a communications package for Earth Command. Include everything, the alien signals, our visitors' transmissions, and our analysis. Captain, they'll never believe it. Then, we make them believe it. Dr. Rodriguez, I want you to prepare a response to our visitor. Tell them we're curious about them too. The response they crafted was simple, but revolutionary. We have observed your conflict across multiple star systems. We are also curious. Would you be willing to explain your objectives? The answer came back almost immediately, as if the Devourer Collective had been waiting for exactly this question. Objectives, assimilation of useful traits. Consumption of resources for collective growth. Elimination of stagnant forms. Query. Your species demonstrates unexpected innovation despite primitive technology. How do you solve unsolvable problems? Dr. Rodriguez stared at the translation. Captain, I think it just asked us for tactical advice. Sarah smiled grimly. Then, let's give it something to think about. She authorized a carefully crafted response that would prove to be the turning point of the Galactic War. We solve unsolvable problems by changing the rules of the game. Every challenge contains its own solution if you can see it from the right angle. Question: have you considered that consumption might make you weaker rather than stronger? The silence that followed lasted for hours. Throughout the galaxy, the Devourer advance ground to a complete halt as the collective consciousness grappled with a concept that had never occurred to them. In the Galactic Council chambers, sensors detected the cessation of all Devourer activity. For the first time in months, no new distress calls were being received. What's happening? Whispered Ambassador Zexai. Elder Kawanin's patterns had shifted to a color none of them had seen before, pure white, indicating complete bewilderment. They've stopped. All of them. The entire collective has gone silent. Commander Thrall checked his tactical displays in disbelief. My remaining fleets report no hostile activity. The Devourers are just floating in space. Dr. Elon's mechanical voice carried an unusual note of something almost like wonder. Fascinating. It appears a single question from a primitive species has crashed their collective consciousness. Unknown to any of them, across the galaxy, billions of Devourer entities were experiencing something unprecedented: doubt. The human question had introduced a logical paradox into their collective thinking that they couldn't resolve through their usual methods of consumption and adaptation. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers were thinking instead of simply acting. And in that moment of pause, the galaxy found hope in the most unexpected place. A small blue planet whose inhabitants had never even known they weren't alone. The emergency session of Earth's United Nations Security Council was unlike any in history. Captain Mitchell sat at the head of the table, still in her space suit, having been brought directly from the Endeavor to address world leaders about what she had discovered. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said Secretary General Chun, her voice carefully controlled. "You're telling us that there's a galaxy-wide war happening right outside our solar system, and humanity just accidentally became involved." "That's correct, ma'am. Our probe made contact with one of the combatants, and now they've stopped their advance to think about something we said." The Russian representative leaned forward. "What exactly did you tell them?" Dr. Rodriguez, who had been brought along to explain the technical details, consulted his notes. "We suggested that consumption might make them weaker rather than stronger, and asked if they had considered changing their approach to problem solving." The room erupted in nervous laughter. The idea that humanity's first contact with aliens had resulted in giving them philosophical advice was almost too absurd to believe. President Williams of the American Federation raised her hand for silence. "Dr. Rodriguez, what's our assessment of the threat leveled to Earth?" "Unknown, ma'am. The entity we encountered seemed genuinely curious about human thinking patterns. But we have no idea how long this pause will last." Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the Devourer Collective was experiencing something unprecedented in their eons of existence, an identity crisis. The collective consciousness that had consumed countless civilizations was struggling with a simple question that had never occurred to them. Throughout their existence, they had operated on a basic principle: absorb useful traits, discard the rest, grow stronger through consumption. But the human question had introduced a paradox. What if their method of growth was actually limiting their potential? What if by consuming other species, they were destroying the very diversity that could lead to revolutionary breakthroughs? The Devourer entity near Earth began transmitting again, but this time its message was different, more hesitant, almost vulnerable. Query: your species suggests alternative growth methods. Explain how weakness can become strength. Captain Mitchell, now back aboard the Endeavor and in constant communication with Earth Command, crafted her response carefully. She had been joined by a team of Earth's best military strategists, philosophers, and scientists, all working together to maintain this unprecedented dialogue. "Weakness becomes strength through adaptation and cooperation," she transmitted. "Our species survived not by being the strongest, but by working together and learning from failure. Every challenge taught us new ways to think." The response came faster this time. "Cooperation. Unknown concept. Collective operates as single entity. How do separate minds create stronger solutions?" Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's leading expert in game theory, suggested the next response. "Separate minds see problems differently. When we combine different perspectives, we find solutions no single mind could discover alone. Competition between ideas makes all ideas stronger." Hours passed as the exchange continued. The Devourer Collective was asking increasingly complex questions about human nature, society, and problem-solving methods. Each answer seemed to generate more questions, as if the collective was trying to understand something completely outside their experience. In the Galactic Council chambers, representatives watched in amazement as their monitoring systems tracked the unprecedented conversation. "They've been talking for 18 standard hours," reported Elder KYNN, her patterns shifting between confusion and fascination. Never in recorded history has a Devourer Collective engaged in extended dialogue with another species. Commander Thrall studied the tactical displays showing Devourer positions throughout the galaxy. They're still not moving. Every unit, every ship, every entity, completely motionless. Ambassador Zexhai clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "What if the humans have done something we never considered? What if they're actually communicating with them as equals rather than trying to fight or flee? Dr. Elon's mechanical voice carried a note of calculation. Probability analysis indicates a 93% chance that standard diplomatic protocols would have failed with the Devourers. Human approach shows success rate of unknown parameters. No historical precedent exists. As the conversation between humanity and the Devourers continued, something extraordinary began to happen. The collective consciousness started to fragment, not in a destructive way, but in a manner that allowed for individual thought processes within the greater whole. We are experiencing disagreement, the Devourer transmitted. Some elements of collective belief consumption remains optimal. Others question fundamental assumptions. This is new. Captain Mitchell smiled as she crafted her response. Disagreement is good. It means you're thinking. We call it debate, and it's how we test ideas to see which ones work best. Debate, the response came back. Testing ideas through conflict of concepts rather than physical consumption. Intriguing. Collective wishes to understand. How do you resolve disagreements without destroying the losing perspective? The question led to an explanation of democracy, compromise, and the scientific method. The Devourers learned about peer review, about how human civilization had grown stronger by preserving minority opinions and learning from past mistakes. Meanwhile, throughout the galaxy, something unprecedented was occurring. Individual Devourer entities were beginning to exhibit independent thought patterns. Some questioned the collective's methods, while others defended traditional approaches. For the first time in their existence, they were having internal debates. This is remarkable, Elder KYNN observed. The collective consciousness appears to be developing individual personalities. Is that good or bad for us? Asked Ambassador ZXHY. Commander Thrall checked his sensor readings. Well, they're still not attacking anyone. In fact, some of them appear to be withdrawing from systems they had previously consumed. Back on Earth, Dr. Rodriguez was monitoring another interesting development. Captain, we're receiving transmissions from other Devourer entities throughout the galaxy. They're all asking questions about art, about music, about why humans create things that serve no survival purpose. Captain Mitchell authorized the formation of communication teams worldwide. Philosophers, artists, scientists, and ordinary citizens began responding to a flood of questions from entities that had never encountered the concept of creating beauty for its own sake. The questions became more profound. Why do humans help strangers? What is the purpose of laughter? How can loss make someone stronger? Why do humans tell stories about imaginary people and places? Each answer revealed aspects of human nature that the Devourers had never encountered. They began to understand that strength could come from vulnerability, that growth could come from preservation rather than consumption, and that the whole could indeed be greater than the sum of its parts when those parts were allowed to remain distinct. As the dialogue continued, the galaxy held its breath, watching as the most destructive force in recorded history slowly transformed into something entirely new. Earthlings were off limits. Yet humanity came to the rescue. Part 5. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy had become a fundamentally different place. The Galactic Council chambers, once filled with desperate war planning, now hosted the most unusual diplomatic summit in recorded history. Captain Mitchell stood before the assembled representatives, no longer wearing her military uniform, but rather the insignia of Earth's first galactic ambassador. Beside her, a shimmering holographic form represented the Devourer Collective, or rather, what they had become. Honorable delegates, Mitchell began, I present the newly formed Synthesis Alliance, representing the transformed collective consciousness of the former Devourer entities. The hologram shifted and spoke in a voice that had learned to convey emotion. We greet the Council with gratitude and regret. Gratitude for the patience shown during our evolution. Regret for the destruction caused before we learned better ways. Elder Kawinen's patterns had shifted to warm golden hues, a color associated with joy and wonder. In 50 cycles of Council service, I never imagined we would witness such a transformation. The being that had once been part of the unstoppable Devourer collective continued. Humanity taught us that growth through destruction is limited. True growth comes from creation, cooperation, and preservation of diversity. We offer our abilities not for consumption, but for construction. Commander Thrall, his scales now bright with health after months without warfare, leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing? Restoration, the synthesis entity replied simply. We consumed 12 star systems and 47 billion beings. While we cannot return the dead, we can rebuild what was destroyed. Our matter manipulation abilities, combined with human creative thinking, can restore these worlds to better than they were. The proposal was staggering. The former Devourers possessed technology that could reshape matter at the molecular level. Combined with human innovation and the diverse knowledge of the galactic community, they could create something unprecedented. A restoration project that would benefit everyone. Ambassador Zexhai clicked her mandibles in amazement. You're offering to rebuild the civilizations you destroyed? More than rebuild, Mitchell interjected. We're proposing a new model for galactic civilization. The synthesis entities have learned that diversity of thought creates stronger solutions. They want to create not just restored worlds, but improved ones, places where different species can work together in ways never before attempted. Dr. Rodriguez, now Earth Chief Xenolinguist, pulled up holographic displays showing the project scope. We've identified 17 devastated systems that can be restored. But more importantly, we've discovered that each species has unique problem-solving approaches. The Vorthak excel at biological adaptation, the Altarians at strategic planning, the Nixians at resource distribution. And humans? Asked Dr. Ilan of the Synthetic Collective. Humans excel at seeing connections others miss, the synthesis entity answered. You taught us that the impossible is merely the improbable waiting for the right perspective. Over the following months, the restoration project began in earnest. Synthesis entities worked alongside galactic construction teams, rebuilding destroyed worlds with improvements that incorporated the best ideas from every species. The first restored planet, New Vorthak Prime, became a model for the new approach. Instead of a single species dominating the world, it was designed as a multi-species collaboration center. Vorthak biotechnology created adaptive ecosystems, Altarian engineering provided robust infrastructure, and human creativity designed public spaces that encouraged interaction between different cultures. But the most significant change wasn't in the rebuilt worlds. It was in how the galaxy approached problems. The synthesis entities had retained their ability to process information on a massive scale, but now they used it to facilitate cooperation rather than consumption. We call it the network, explained Dr. Kim during a presentation to the Galactic Council. When any member species faces a challenge they can't solve alone, they can request assistance from the network. The synthesis entities help coordinate responses, bringing together exactly the right combination of skills and perspectives needed. The first major test came when a plague threatened the Centauri colonies. Traditional medicine had failed, and the disease was spreading rapidly. Through the network, Vorthak biologists worked with human epidemiologists and synthetic collective analytical systems. The solution came from an unexpected source: Nixian atmospheric manipulation techniques that could deliver targeted treatments to entire planetary populations simultaneously. The plague would have wiped out millions using traditional approaches, Elder KYNN observed. Through the network, we contained it in weeks. Captain Mitchell, now Admiral Mitchell of Earth's expanding space fleet, stood on the bridge of humanity's first interstellar vessel. Through the viewport, she could see New Earth colony taking shape around Alpha Centauri, humanity's first world beyond Sol, built in partnership with the galactic community. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting human participation in the Andromeda Contact Project. Mitchell smiled. Long-range sensors had detected signals from the Andromeda Galaxy, indicating another galactic civilization. The Council wanted humanity involved in first contact protocols, not because humans had the most advanced technology, but because they had proven uniquely gifted at communication and creative problem solving. Tell the Council we're honored to participate, Mitchell replied. And remind them that our first rule of contact is always the same. Start with curiosity, not assumptions. As her ship set course for the rendezvous point, where humanity would help the galaxy reach out to an entirely new form of life, Mitchell reflected on how much had changed. Earth was no longer an isolated, protected world. It was a full member of a galactic community that had learned to value diversity, creativity, and cooperation over conquest. The former Devourer entity that had first encountered humanity's probe now served as Earth's liaison to the Synthesis Alliance. It had chosen an individual identity and a name, Pioneer. Admiral, Pioneer's voice came through the communication system. I have been analyzing the Andromeda's signals. They present fascinating puzzles. Good, Mitchell replied. Humanity loves puzzles. Indeed. That is why the galaxy turned to you when faced with the impossible. You taught us all that the impossible is just another word for interesting. Looking out at the stars ahead, Admiral Mitchell knew that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. They had saved the galaxy not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but by asking the right questions and showing others how to think differently. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe wasn't the ability to destroy or consume, but the simple human tendency to ask, what if we tried something completely different? The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 12 different species gathered around the massive crystalline table. Ambassador Zexhai of the Vorthak Empire clicked her mandibles anxiously, her four eyes darting between the holographic displays showing the crisis unfolding in the Kepler system. The situation grows worse by the hour, she announced, her translator converting her chittering speech into standard galactic. The Devourers have consumed 3 more colonies. At this rate, they'll reach the core worlds within 2 cycles. Commander Thrall of the Altarian fleet slammed his scaled fist against the table. My warships are being torn apart like paper. These creatures, they adapt to everything we throw at them. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, even our most advanced shield technology. Nothing stops them for long. The Devourers were unlike anything the galaxy had faced before. They weren't a species in the traditional sense, but rather a collective consciousness of metallic, ever-changing beings that consumed technology and biological matter alike. They learned from every encounter, becoming stronger and more resistant with each battle. Elder KYNN of the Cerebral Collective floated in her containment sphere, her massive brain pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Our psychic attacks prove futile. Their collective mind is too vast, too alien for us to penetrate or disrupt. The room fell silent, except for the soft humming of translation devices. They had exhausted every conventional option. The combined military might of 12 advanced civilizations was being systematically dismantled by these relentless invaders. There is one possibility, whispered Ambassador Nyx from the shadows where her gaseous form undulated nervously. But it violates our most sacred laws. All eyes turned toward her. The Nyxians were known for their cautious nature and deep respect for galactic protocols. Speak plainly, demanded Commander Thrall. The 3rd planet of the Sol system, Nyx continued reluctantly. Earth. Its inhabitants have proven remarkably resourceful in warfare. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Even mentioning Earth in this context was considered taboo. The Sol system had been declared off-limits by unanimous galactic decree nearly 50 cycles ago. The humans of Earth had been classified as a developing species under protection after their first crude radio signals were detected. Standard protocol demanded complete non-interference until they achieved faster-than-light travel on their own. But the galaxy's intelligence networks have been quietly monitoring human progress, and what they observed was both fascinating and terrifying. Humans possessed an almost supernatural ability to find creative solutions under pressure, especially when facing impossible odds. Absolutely not. Elder Kawanin's patterns flashed angry crimson. The prime directive is absolute. No species may interfere with a developing civilization. Even to save ourselves? Ambassador Zexhai's voice carried a desperate edge. The debate raged for hours. Species that had been allies for centuries found themselves divided. The Vorthak Empire argued for immediate contact, while the Cerebral Collective insisted on maintaining cosmic law. The Altarians wavered between military necessity and moral obligation. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim, another colony went dark. Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Earth vessel Endeavour was conducting a routine survey mission near the edge of the solar system when her communications officer picked up the strange transmissions. The signals were clearly artificial, but unlike anything in Earth's databases. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Shun called from his station. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures beyond Pluto. Multiple ships, but the configurations don't match any known Earth technology." Sarah studied the sensor readings with growing concern. The signatures suggested vessels of enormous size, far beyond anything humanity had built. More troubling were the intermittent distress signals her equipment was barely able to decode. "Are you certain these aren't experimental military craft?" she asked. "Negative, ma'am. The power outputs are off the charts. And, Captain, some of these signals appear to be coming from the direction of nearby star systems. This isn't human technology." As if to confirm their worst fears, a flash of brilliant light erupted in the distance. Through their telescopes, they watched as something massive and dark consumed what appeared to be a metallic structure the size of a small moon. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it seemed they had their answer, and it was more terrifying than anyone had imagined. Unknown to the Endeavor's crew, they had just witnessed the Devourers consuming a Galactic Council monitoring station. The same station that had been secretly watching Earth for decades, ensuring humanity remained ignorant of the greater galactic community. The irony was not lost on those council members who knew. In their desperation to protect a primitive species, they might have doomed themselves to extinction.